Slamdown Podcast is sponsored by Body Slam and Jam, the wrestling game YouTuber. To see his videos on YouTube, search YouTube Body Slam, capital N and Jam, or to follow him by Twitter, it is at Body Slam, capital N, Jam.
Good day, and thank you for joining us on the Memory and Thought podcast, our second episode here on the 2nd of December. I'm Keegan, and I'm accompanied by Shae, aka Lucha. How are you doing today, Shae?
I'm doing well, thank you. How are you?
I'm well, thank you. We'd like to thank Erdy from the e-wrestling broadcast service for again hosting us, as well as Ashley from Slamdown. He's here controlling the switchboard as well for the second consecutive time, and we're deeply appreciative. Thanks to everybody who listened a fortnight ago, regardless of your thoughts. I think I can speak for me and Shae that we're both grateful. We did a review on Catastrophe, and our review certainly got people talking on the HKW boards, both positive and negative. No offence was intended, but at the same time, we want to be honest with our opinions, and nothing is intended to be personal. As it stands, I think for the moment, both I and Shae, we're going to focus on reviewing the real thing, if we can call it that. We're going to head back to the temple for a double header on this week's show, starting with episode 12, and then we'll get to episode 13. We've also got an editorial topic that we'll get to later on. Anyway, Shae, Lucha Underground, episode 12. Any general thoughts to kick us off?
The general thoughts I've been having about this season as a whole, not just this episode, is that something I've noticed that separates the early episodes of Lucha Underground Season 2 and the early episodes of Lucha Underground Season 3 has been that Season 2 felt like a continuous narrative, whereas Season 3 feels like a collection of short stories. You know, you've got the short story of the Mac with his rivalry against... Killshot with his rivalry against Marty the Moth. You've got the story of Prince Puma and his tutelage under Vampiro. You've got Sexy Star's stuff against Johnny Mundo in Lucha Underground. You've now got Killshot stuff with his old military partner in Dante Fox. It's almost like an anthology season at the start, it feels.
Yeah. We'll start with the intro, Shae, and this is something I know we discussed earlier in the week. Obviously, Paul London's had introduction promos in the last several weeks. What did you make of the start with the White Rabbit gimmick and the two guys that joined him for the trios match to kick off the show of episode 12? You think it was a good match, and do you like the White Rabbit gimmick?
I personally quite enjoyed it. Now, I've got a philosophy of, then you, so let's not make any big judgments one way or the other. But it's a type of gimmick that I personally enjoy. I'm always a fan of, the beware the silly ones kinds of characters, the one that look like they'd be a joke and then turn out to be far more threatening than you'd actually expect. And the White Rabbit tribe have that all over them with their Alice in Wonderland influence to them.
I definitely thought of Alice when I first saw the get-up. And I'm like you there. I don't like to jump into conclusions. I mean, I'm going to wait and see before I give a real opinion of the White Rabbit tribe. I mean, I would say that not every promotion can run a gimmick like this, but Lucha Underground is probably the best place you can kind of harvest this sort of persona. And I don't want to use the words get away with it, but at least, have it on TV and be a genuine part of the show rather than like a laughing stock.
And I think that's because... Oh, sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you.
No, it's all right. No, you're good to go.
Right. And I think that's because, like I was saying last week, Lucha Underground has the world building behind it that they feel like a natural fit. Whereas a lot of other shows that include gimmicks like this, it's a random, off-the-cuff thing that seems to come out of nowhere with no explanation of what the hell is going on, who these people are, or how and why they can do stuff like this.
A question's just occurred to me there, Shae. I obviously know that you're a huge fan of people like Bray Wyatt and Raven, and I know that you're aware of Jake the Snake's influence. Do you think that if Bray Wyatt, for example, was handled, and I don't mean that in an e-wrestling term, but if he was booked in Lucha Underground it would make a significant difference to the character, and would you approve much more of their booking than it is in the WWE?
Oh, most certainly. Now, this some may consider this to be over-exaggeration, but personally I feel that every character in the W would be served much better if they went over to Lucha Underground. But Bray Wyatt especially, because what makes his character so appealing is the mythos he's created around it. You know, he's this Cajun priestess who's possessed by the devil. And that stuff can own, you know, there's all these stories and questions around this character, but because of how limited the WWE is, they never get answered, they never get paid off, and therefore the audience eventually just tunes him out. It's like, we know there's not going to lead to anything, we're bored of you, and that's basically what's happened. With Lucha Underground, though, it's all part of the larger narrative, so a performer and character who perfectly fits that style of storytelling would do wonders in Lucha Underground.
I've thought that on many occasions, and I kind of knew the answer to your question, but I wanted the viewers, listeners rather, that's a silly mistake, but the listeners to get your take on that. The one thing that I've got with it, Shae, is I know Paul London he's a particular character if you've seen him in PWG and ROH as opposed to the WWE. I'm not completely convinced it capitalizes on all of his talents because he is an exceptional athlete. But at the same time, I thought about this just prior to the podcast. His good mate, Matt Hardy, has totally reinvented himself to great acclaim recently. So for that alone, I'm willing to give the White Rabbit persona the benefit of the doubt, which leads me to a question that appeared in the chat room from Ash last week, Shae, that I want to put to you. He said, obviously, I know we're not big followers of TNA, unlike Ash, but he said, do you think that broken Matt Hardy and maybe mainstream promotions, do you think either now or in the future they'll start to copy the Lucha Underground style in the same way that, you know, people in the WWE and WCW were accused of copying straight from ECW when it was at its most innovative and popular? Do you think that'll start to happen? We'll start to see traces of Lucha Underground appear on WWE television or even TNA?
Well, we've already seen it appear in TNA in the sense that that broken Matt Hardy thing was done in exactly the same style as Lucha Underground was, you know, shot as it's an actual TV show or movie or whatever instead of shot like the typical camera backstage stuff. But I don't like to refer to it as, you know, copying Lucha Underground or what have you. Because when something is a change in the genre, then it's a change in the genre. It's like people back in the 90s in video games used to refer to every first-person shooter as a Doom clone. Now it's just a new genre. And I really do think that this style of making the backstage segments hopefully will and definitely should become a major thing because, like I said, it has a lot fewer plot holes to it. You can still do the normal backstage camera stuff, just how Lucha Underground does that for, you know, in-story interviews between the characters. And it allows, I think, more variety with your stories without breaking the suspension of disbelief.
Yeah. So in terms of the match, Shae, as an opener, with the White Rabbit Tribe making their debut, first of all, did you agree with the finish that they should lose to the Trios champions? Usually I don't start with a conclusion, but I wanted to get that question in. Do you think the result was right of the match? And do you agree with the booking of the match as well, that they should be given a Trios title shot just because of Paul London's reputation?
I agree with that, yes, on two levels. One, I'll start with the book getting the title shot just because of Paul London's reputation. This makes sense on multiple levels. One, of course, Dario Cueto being a greedy bastard, and two, Dario Cueto really does not like that team. In fact, he's been trying to break it up since the first season. So him wanting to have any excuse to get the titles off them makes perfect sense for him. When it comes to them losing, now, I've been going on two minds about this sort of thing because obviously the traditional thing is, you know, if you have the new guy come in and they lose, you establish them right from the start as losers. But I think Lucha Underground has been doing a good precedent of that, is that a character will lose on their debut, but then stuff after that will establish that, no, these guys are actually pretty competent. They just lost because against the more experienced fighters, which makes more sense from a realistic standpoint. though, the idea of using the word realistic when referring to Lucha Underground seems silly. But with the show this weird, sometimes having a few elements grounded in realism actually can help the immersion. If you have everything be utter nonsense, then the audience has nothing to really connect with. It just feels like random stuff and they stop caring.
I'd go along with that. On many occasions, it just seems to be a pattern that a debuting superstar or returning comes in and just wins because that's the done thing. And a case in point, it happened. Obviously, we broadcast 2 weeks ago, and it was about to head towards the Survivor Series, and you had Goldberg and Brock Lesnar. Now, I don't need to tell any of our listeners, I'm sure, of Brock's winning streak and how he's been booked in the last couple of years. I know Goldberg was a massive deal. I remember watching him win the world title on Nitro back in '98 from Hulk Hogan at the Georgia Dome. But he hasn't been in a ring for 12 years. And for him to destroy Brock Lesnar in 90 seconds, while it was a shock, and yes, I know some people have referenced Conor McGregor and Jose Aldo in 13 seconds, and I would like to see more wrestling matches go a short distance to preserve, if we're making it a little bit realistic, but I don't think it was the right moment. I know we're going a bit off topic, but I think there it would have made sense if Goldberg had lost, but it seems to be the done thing in WWE to have a returning hero win, regardless of whether it makes sense or not. Another case in point, if you don't want a recent example, would be Shawn Michaels returning from his back injury 4.5 years later to be arguably, from a WWE point of view, the best in-ring competitor of that time in Triple H. No ring rust at all then. So I like the fact that Paul London's team and the White Rabbit tribe lost, because also the other team you would surely feel have to be more cohesive straight away. In terms of the match, Shae, did you like the match? Did you think it was an entertaining spectacle?
I definitely did. One of the things I like about them, and compared to a lot of other weird characters, is that they're able to use their weirdness offensively. They're able to use it as an actual weapon rather than just, he's weird, oh, and also he's in the ring. They use it as part of their tactics, doing stuff. They're constantly playing mind games with the other team. Like, for example, when Phoenix is trying to make the hot tag, they knock out his teammates and rush to his side of the ring, so that the corner that he's crawling to make the hot tag, suddenly it's filled up with all his opponents. It's like they were trying to basically turn their opponent's worlds upside down, and this helped with the idea that while they may have lost to the champions, they're still a legitimate threat and could probably take on almost anyone else if they gave the champions this big of a fight.
Yeah, and you would feel the more time they spend together, theoretically they would develop. But I loved that spot in terms of, it made me smile, and very few moments do in wrestling these days. It seemed a combination of comedy and genius, like terrific teamwork, and I kind of find myself smiling, thinking that was great.
One of the things that it's comedy, but it's in-universe comedy, as in it's clear that these characters are having fun while doing something that's a tactically very dangerous thing to do.
Yeah.
It's kind of like the Joker. It's like the magic trick with the eye in the Dark Knight. Yes, it's fun. Yes, it's funny. Yes, he's clearly having fun with it. He's also incredibly dangerous while doing it. He's just stabbed someone in the eye, and these guys basically just shut down the most common wrestling tag team save your ass thing.
Shae, you got any more comments on the opening match of episode 12 before we move on to the second match? Any closing comments there?
Yeah, just one more, which is one thing that bugged me was, guys, is this a tornado tag or not? Then again, the more I think about it, this actually made sense. So to explain what I mean, like the wrestlers were fighting the ring like 3-on-1, 2-on-1, every combination of people in the ring for way more than a 5 count. And yet they occasionally still needed to tag each other in. So it's like, wait, why isn't the referee disqualified by a 5 count? And then I remember the last time the referee tried to disqualify someone. So at this point, I think the referees have just thrown their hands up in the air and said, you know what? Fuck it. We're just here to count the pins. I want to keep my job. I'll just go with it.
Yeah. In that way,
then why did they if that was the case, why did they bother going with the tags in the first place? Why not just keep fighting in the ring, since apparently it's allowed?
True, true. And I've seen a lot of that in Japan and Mexico. Obviously, I know we're referring to Lucha Underground, but Triple H, Triple A, I got confused with the wrestler there. Triple A organization, as well as NJPW and AJPW in the past. You kind of think the refs there, they're supposed to be honourable, but they just enter the ring whenever they feel like it. But it also
I
bears
can explain
traces.
that in some cases. I do know that in Lucha's style of tag teaming, whoever is in the ring, whichever two people are in the ring, become the legal man. So it doesn't matter how you enter or exit the ring. You don't have to tag each other in.
Yeah, yeah. That could be a good explanation, as well as ECW.
But you're still not supposed to have like more than two people in the ring at the same time.
No, and that's where I can see why you've got a problem with the match. I suppose they could just, I mean, whether it's clear to the viewer or not depends on your background. If you're familiar with Lucha Libre and not just Lucha Underground, then you're probably accustomed to seeing it. I certainly know that when I watch Japanese wrestling, I've had to kind of scratch my head being like, well, the referee has got absolutely no authority whatsoever. So, you know, why don't you just have him on the outside and then when the cover's made, he slides in? You know, I know you might say, well, he wouldn't be there for the count quick enough, but at the same time, he's just getting in the way and there's no real respect for his authority.
Yeah.
Second match, Shae. Killshot was involved with Dandy Fox. I'll just quickly give a thought of mine and then I'll get to you because you certainly know more about Killshot than I do. Post-Aztec Warfare, this was definitely my favourite match. And to be honest, it might even be my personal favourite match in the few episodes I've watched, which I know may seem as blasphemy considering Prince Puma headlined against Mil Muertes in the Grave Consequences match. But I really, really enjoyed this match. And before I let you take the floor, I would say, while, again, they shouldn't maybe copy, referring to something earlier, this is kind of what I think the WWE Cruiserweight division, this type of thing at least, they should be striving for. I thought this was hard-hitting, it was quick, it was gripping, and I personally loved the match, if I haven't already made that clear. I'll give more analysis in a moment, but Shae, what did you think about Killshot and Dante Fox?
You know, Brandon Stroud of the Uproxx review said the exact same thing about that match in the Cruiserweight, so small world.
Yeah.
But like you, I definitely enjoyed the match, and I also agree it would be match of the night. The Death Valley Driver, talking about other people's reviews, the Death Valley Driver on the apron, I remember John and Ashton on Twitwell made the good comment that, you know, normally someone kicking out of a move that devastating, a Death Valley Driver on the apron would be considered very unrealistic, like them just no-selling it. But they made a good point that it was a case of, I hate you so much, I cannot allow myself to be pinned by you. So even under normal circumstances, the pain would be too much. Here, I have so much hate and so much adrenaline, it's going to force me through that pain.
Yeah. One question for you, Shae. Obviously, with Lucha Underground, all of their shows are broadcast on El Rey Network. We don't have the platform of the pay-per-view in the way that WWE did or WCW in the past. So obviously, it comes across as a regular TV match, but in many ways, it's not. Do you think, though, that was their blow-up match, or do you think it's the start? Is it a series getting started, or has it already met its climax?
It's definitely the series getting started. There's no way they'd end a feud with that much heat that early.
Yeah. I've read a couple of opinions, I'll admit, that one or two people have said they don't know where it goes from here. But for me, like you, I feel that could be the start of, I'm not saying a best of seven necessarily, because I know they've done that with Cage and Tejano, but it could certainly be, you know, the two of them testing each other. As this match showed, they're definitely evenly matched, and it taps into the fact that they're in character, they know each other incredibly well.
Well, here's how the way I think it could go personally. Now, I've read comments like that they're very similar. The idea of, you know, he wanted to be, like, Killshot left him for dead. He wanted to beat Killshot in a wrestling match in order to, you know, get his revenge. Well, he's got his revenge. What's next? But what if that isn't enough for Dante Fox? What if, Killshot like Dante's like, okay, I'm done, I've got my revenge. But then a few weeks later, Killshot gets a shot at the title. Hell, he gets a Gift of the Gods medallion, which will put him in line for the Gift of the Gods championship. And Dante's like, no, you fucked up. You don't get to have any success. My life was ruined because of you. I'm going to make sure you suffer the same thing as I did. You're having no success, no money, nothing.
A quick question for you, Shae, as well. After Killshot, where would you see Dante Fox going? Because it seems that he's come in with this rivalry with Killshot. Killshot was already on the roster, part of the show, but I know that Dante Fox can go elsewhere and probably will. They won't just bin the character. But personally, where do you see him going when and if this feud, well, it will end at one point, but where do you see Dante Fox going after Killshot?
Honestly, joining the battle lines. See, the thing is, there's been build-up to this war between the tribes that's been going along, and considering that both Dante and Killshot are former soldiers, they're going to get involved one way or the other. Because while Dante might not be concerned with anyone besides Killshot, other people in the temple may take an interest in him. And he may be drawn into other battles whether he likes it or not. Yeah.
In terms of the match, Shae, I thought there were some excellent near falls, one or two that, like, genuinely, even for a seasoned wrestling fan, that you might be like, did he have him? Rather than Vince McMahon's old, he got him, no he didn't, routine, which rarely fooled anybody. One thing about Lucha Underground as well for me, Shae, is I've never seen a wrestling promotion, and I think it's a combination of the workers and obviously the way they've got the production set up. Kicks sound absolutely fucking lethal on this show, and I apologise for swearing, it's just to emphasise that. And it's not just this match, it's a general rule of thumb. I don't know if that makes it come across as more hard-hitting in general, but also sometimes it seems to water down the kicks because you see so many in a show, like it's a sickening sound. And obviously we're going to get to that on episode 13 as well later down the line, but I love the match, and this had all kinds of sounds to it as well in between Killshot and Dante.
Considering how loud, talking about the latest of how loud Pentagon Jr.'s chops are, those chops are actually turned, the sound of those chops is actually been turned down. I watched a clip of it which was at a live performance, and his chops are even louder. It sounds like someone got shot in the chest. So it's entirely possible the sound of those kicks, that's not edited in footage. They really are that loud.
Yeah, I have that impression.
Whether it's because they're fighting that stiff, or more likely, or at least I hope, because they're doing the slap the legs trick.
Yeah. I think I haven't looked for it, and I've been meaning to, but I'd like to think that it was. Without being a pussy, we're wrestling fans, and we still want the wrestlers to work safely. So, any other thoughts on this match, Shae, before we go on to our main event? And I'm sure we'll have some comments on that at length.
I like this character stuff at the start. Do we really have to do this? That kind of banter at the beginning just added just that extra layer of depth to the match.
Yeah. I know we'll cover this on another podcast, Shae, but we've talked about rivalries before, both in e-wrestling and professional wrestling. Do you think Killshot and Dante Fox, you said it's just getting heated up, do you think it's got the signs of being a really great in-ring feud for Lucha Underground, something for fans to remember?
Oh, definitely. I think like the last feud that Killshot was in against Marty the Moth, while short, the ending of it made it a classic feud. So with this one that has even more personality and heat behind it, I really do think it could be, up there with, Johnny Mundo versus Prince Puma, or hell, if they really play their cards right, it could be their next Muertes versus Phoenix.
Okay. Do you see either of the two guys going on to the main event situation like some of those aforementioned wrestlers, or do you think they'll just be like nearly guys? Could you see Killshot as the Lucha Underground champion?
To me, Killshot is already a nearly guy. To me, Killshot is in the upper mid card. he's the level of, the Gift of the Gods champion, which is basically their Intercontinental Champion equivalent at, well, think like 90s Intercontinental Champion, not modern day Intercontinental Champion. So high upper mid-card, brushing against the ceiling of the main event, and this is him just getting started. So I definitely think he'll be able to break that glass ceiling, if not in this season, definitely by the fourth season.
So somebody to watch. And onto our main event. I'll go first here, Shae. Obviously, it was Sexy Star defending against Johnny Mundo. Mundo had threatened Dario Cueto that if he didn't win Aztec Warfare, he would cash in against whoever won it. Obviously, Sexy Star emerged victorious by seeing off Mil Muertes at the end of Aztec Warfare, and she became the champion. We spoke about that on our opening podcast. Shae, these two met a few weeks ago. Obviously, it was a different type of match, but it was predictably interference-riddled for me. While I'm happy to see the strap off Sexy Star, I think I made that abundantly clear that I didn't like her winning it in the first place. I don't know if it dilutes her accomplishment at Aztec Warfare. I'll allow you to cover that in a second. I felt even bringing her out first, ahead of Mundo, she entered the temple first, I felt that was a mistake. I'm not somebody who believes the champion should always enter last, but I think in this case, or at least in the majority of cases, they should. And I don't know if there was any point in putting it on Sexy Star with her dropping it 7 days, well, not 7 days later, well, to watch it, yes. What do you think, Shae? I know you were fist pumping when Sexy Star won against Mil Muertes. Was it wrong to boot that in the first place, or at least wrong to take the title off her against Johnny Mundo, or do you think it was correct?
I think here's the way I'm going to look at it. I'm going to look at it on two angles, because this is kind of that's good, that's bad. On the one hand, you're right. It does feel kind of almost like her holding the title was like a consolation prize. Like, yay, look, we got a title on the woman. Now let's get it back onto the man. You can definitely see it that way. On the other hand, I think that the idea was always to get the title on Mundo in the first place, but they obviously couldn't have him beat Matanza because Matanza would fucking eat the man. So they needed to put on someone else, and preferably a babyface that the audience cheers for, to really get that heat onto him.
Quick question.
So it's kind of a double thing.
Yeah. Quick question for you. I know that you're a person away from the radio. We've had many conversations, of course. You're a person who you frown on interference for the sake of it, which obviously seems WWE style. It's their template, their DNA. With Johnny Mundo, does it personally bug you, Shae, that at the moment, considering he had a wonderful rivalry with Prince Puma and has shown himself to be a very, very capable guy in all promotions, but let's focus on Lucha Underground. But does it annoy you right now that Johnny Mundo seems like a guy who can't get it done on his own?
Well, actually, no, because here's the thing. Just like you just said, Johnny Mundo has shown, not just in other promotions, but in Lucha Underground itself, that he's a very talented person. He's just egotistical and lazy. I can buy that even if the interference never happened, he'd still be able to, grit his teeth and get it done on his own talent. He just doesn't want to bother with it. That's the problem I have with so many other guys that rely on cheating and interference, or the chicken shit heels, and for the audience's benefit, we will get to that in another editorial. But with so many of them, it's not a matter of by hook or by crook. They can only win by crook. Like Seth Rollins made it clear while he was the WWE champion that without the interference, he was useless. He couldn't do a single thing or beat a single opponent without like 50 people coming in to interfere on his behalf. With Johnny Mundo, he has the other people who can interfere on his behalf, but even without Ty interfering in the match, he was fighting Sexy Star as an equal at the very least.
Yeah. It's just though it's on the back of an interference-riddled initial encounter between them. So in the last few weeks, Mundo's 2-0 against her, and there's just been a shitload of interference in both cases. So does it not to you look like, I know he controlled the early going, But when it comes down to it, does it not to you say that he can't beat Sexy Star fairly, or you know that he can, but he's so lazy he's using the others? At the moment, I'm in between the two.
I honestly do, and again, because of how he was performing against her in the early goings of the match and his previous history, I do believe he can beat her without interference. Well, without interference, it's a toss-up. He could beat her, but then again, she could also beat him. And that I don't mind because it means that, once you've got the interference out of the way, it's still a compelling question. It's still a case of, well, who can win here? As opposed to some other stuff where, the face dominates the heel until the heel cheats, so it just feels like, well, we already know who's the better person here. It's the face, and now we're just watching a squash match for 10 minutes until the writer says, nope, the face trips over his own feet and lands, and his balls land on the heel's fist, and now the heel has all the advantage in the world, even though he was portrayed as so utterly pathetic. You'd think that he tried to punch the face in the balls and his hand would just break.
Do you see Sexy Star getting her comeuppance against Johnny Mundo?
Possibly. I can't say for certain right now, but I can definitely see it as a possibility.
If you were booking it, would you choose to go that route or not?
In the same vein, it was something I'd be considering in the cards, but the thing is, I can't really say for now, because in a vacuum, definitely. However, what about the other stars that might, be in line to get their championship? Like, for example, Prince Puma getting it back from Johnny Mundo, Angelico, Son of Havoc, Pentagon Jr. There's all this other stuff, so it's like, in a vacuum, if it was just Sexy Star versus Johnny Mundo, yes. But we need to factor in all this other stuff as well.
Okay.
Plus the larger narrative that they're trying to tell.
Yeah. Just one comment from me regarding the quality of the match. I don't know if it's due to the interference or, as I've said, I'm not the biggest fan of Sexy Star, and I don't want to come across as sexist with that, and I'm certainly going to talk about females wrestling on the next review that we do on this podcast, episode 13, coming in a few moments. But I haven't really enjoyed either of the matches between Sexy Star and Johnny Mundo as such. Especially with them being main event situations for the Gift of the Gods title, and now for the Lucha Underground Championship. They certainly haven't been brilliant main events or even the best match on the card. So that's just one thing from me. Any final comments on episode 12, Shae, before we move on to episode 13?
Not particularly, though I will say in terms of the match, I do think that their second match was a lot better than their first one, because in their second match, Sexy Star got in a lot more believable offense.
Yeah, that's true. I do believe the second one was a superior.
I think the second one, she's starting to get into a style which is avoid their attacks, let them, run into something or make a mistake, and then counter with good, strong strikes. Dodge a clothesline, when they come back, boom, hit the drop kick, boom, a basement drop kick now that they're down the ground.
Wrestling's answer to a good old-fashioned counter-puncher as such, and that wasn't something lost on me either. I kind of noticed that with Mill, and then reinforced with this match against Mundo. Moving on to episode 13 then, Shae. This was dedicated to one match, Pentagon Dark's Gauntlet match against the Black Lotus Triad. The match, you can give more history in a moment, Shae. With Aztec Warfare, the match came about because Lotus and three mysterious ladies who we reviewed this on the last podcast, effectively eliminated Pentagon Dark from the Aztec Warfare match. Before I get into all of that, Shae, as well, what do you think? Did you think that the Gauntlet match was going to take up the whole show, and do you think it was the right decision to do that?
Halfway through the first match, I thought, yes, and when I thought about it, I thought, yes, and that actually makes perfect sense and is the right decision.
For me, I kind of thought if he was going to go with... Because I wasn't sure. This is the one part that I wasn't sure of. I didn't know if he was going to wrestle 3 or 4 matches that night. Because obviously with his Black Lotus herself, you might be able to shed some light on that. But I wasn't sure if he was going to go 3 or 4. Normally Gauntlet matches seem to be you go through three opponents. It did become clear in the first match, I think, that it was going to go the whole night. I've got mixed opinions about it. I do like that Lucha Underground can have a one-match card, essentially. And I know that the formula is 3 matches, and you could argue that the 3 matches have been ticked here. It's Pentagon Dark having 3 separate matches, and that's what Lucha Underground normally presents. It's a 3-match card, because what more can you manage in a 45-minute show if you take the adverts out? But at the same time, and I know that I'm going to get my wrist slapped from my co-host for this, for uttering this comment, but and it's not that it should be done that way, but a lot of gauntlet matches don't normally take 45 minutes. And for me, it seemed to drag, a bit like my sentence there, but I felt that the whole gauntlet match dragged. So I would have liked a 10-minute match with the gauntlet match lasting 30 minutes or 25, and then 2 segments in between. I personally didn't think it had to span the whole show.
I get where you're coming from, actually, but it's kind of because gauntlet matches are usually so quick that I actually like it. It's kind of my problem I have with Iron Man matches or 2 out of 3 Falls matches, where the first fall comes in the first 2 minutes of the match. And it's like, wait, seriously, that's all it took to pin this guy? And it's one of the reasons I like Sami Zayn versus Samoa Joe so much, because the first fall came at a time where a fall would naturally end a match. And same with these guys. Gauntlet matches are usually, hey, his character is so strong, we're going to throw a bunch of jobbers at them and have him beat each of them in 2 minutes at a time.
Well, here's where I get to bring my memory part of the podcast here. Because immediately, because I've got a good memory of that particular time frame. Just a quick anecdote. So in May 1997, at a cold day in hell, headlined by The Undertaker and Steve Austin at that time, what had happened was, in the middle of the show, Ahmed Johnson's ongoing rivalry with the Nation of Domination kind of came to a head. And without giving spoilers from almost 20 years ago, Ahmed later went on to join the Nation of Domination, and there was a reshuffle. The idea was that Ahmed would go through Crush and Savio Vega, and then he would get to Farouk. Now, they were playing on that Farouk had a separated shoulder caused by Ahmed Johnson, and he would go last. Of course, it was all the ruse. The match itself, it was clear that regardless of what Vega and Crush did, Farouk was going to they were going to put him in a position where Farouk was going to have his way with Ahmed Johnson, right to the point that even if he had one arm, he'd be able to do Ahmed Johnson. Quickly to wrap this up, that match didn't go 5 minutes. Granted, it didn't go 45 minutes either. I can't say off the top of my head, I'd have to go back, but I would say it was a 15, 17 minute match. And for me, that still would have been okay for the gauntlet match. Now, Lucha Underground's got better booking than WWE, and this was on a pay-per-view platform, the Ahmed Johnson match I'm referring to. But I still felt that 45 minutes was too long. I think it could have gone 25, 30 minutes. So that's just from my end. I'll let you speak in a second, Shae, but one other thing is, even though I praise them for treating a gauntlet match, expanding it, and as you said, presenting the character as looking stronger, at the same time, the result did feel formulaic. You're progressing to get to the third fight, and you ultimately come up short. So while it was booked better, and that is the ultimate thing here, it still felt as if the match was predictable.
That I still defend, because it's predictable in a way that it should be. It's like, it's like to use an old adage that was leveled against Vince Russo, being unpredictable isn't always a good thing. Like, if you order pizza and then you get a pine cone instead, sure, that's unpredictable, but you're never going to order from that place ever again.
Yeah.
So sometimes it's actually a good thing to follow the formula. Sometimes it's a good idea to give the audience what they expect to see, because often what they expect to see really is kind of the best way the story can go, or in some cases, the only way the story can go, for it to be satisfying or properly done in any way whatsoever.
I suppose they would have killed it if Pentagon Dark had gone through the whole Black Lotus triad immediately. At the same time, I think he would have looked weak if he had only won one match, or maybe worst case scenario, not won any. I think he had to win a couple and ultimately come unstuck. But at the same time, I can't help it. But I know I might be contradicting myself by saying, well, it should have gone less than 45 minutes, because most gauntlet matches do. So it seems I'm subscribing to to a formulaic theory. So I'm careful of being a hypocrite. But at the same time, I think with Lucha Underground in the last few weeks, even though it's an excellent promotion and well booked up, it's sometimes for me to get lost as a wrestling fan. I do want to have an unpredictable ending and grave consequences. That card, at least for me, seemed to be, I only got 1 out of the 3 matches correct. But the other cards, it seems like it's been fairly easy to predict the winner. And that's not me saying, oh, I'm smart. No, it means that it's the entire opposite. It's like I see it as being fairly straightforward. Not the match itself, but easy to predict. I'm not going to predict the finish, but the results seem quite easy to call right now. But you're right, Shae. We don't want unpredictable for the sake of it. It has to be logically booked.
I will say something that's going to be weird in that sense that Lucha Underground has often defied the traditional tropes of thinking. For example, like we were talking about earlier, with the newcomer always wins their first match. So in a way, if you've been following Lucha Underground from the start, having a predictable outcome actually makes it more unpredictable because it's like, wait, Lucha Underground actually went the traditional route? I didn't expect that to happen.
You're kind of second-guessing yourself.
They're being unpredictable by being predictable.
Yeah, like you're more likely to go for the unpredictable finish for the way they are, so they have you kind of second-guessing yourself. In terms of the match, Shae, we'll go to the first 4. So he started off with, these girls had their names revealed at the start of the match and progressively. So he started with the girl called Doku. As I said, the difference here where it's unlike most gauntlet matches, as I said earlier, but just to reiterate, is the match is not slated to stop once Pentagon loses. Even if he lost all 3 matches, he would have to go through all the girls. So regardless of what happened with Doku, he was going to continue anyway. That was made abundantly clear by Dario Cueto the show before. I thought it was a ferocious start. It made her, look quick, trying to get at him with the slaps and things like that. And when they didn't work, obviously the low blow did. But he was brutal with his kicks, with the drop kick and with the super kick later, which I thought was emphatic. It kind of, talking about the pacing and timing of the match, in a way, I felt that Pentagon could have put Doku away earlier, but in a sense, I suppose it showed his sadistic side. It felt like he was making a statement to the others. It was like, this is what's in store for you when you eventually get your asses down here.
As I've said, while he may be cheered like a face, in terms of the actual character, he's the most evil and sadistic heel on the roster.
Yeah. That was referred to in commentary as well, and I know you've said that to me. Mm-hmm.
And two things I noticed, like in the terms of Pentagon Jr. as well, the running theme of the match was almost like a cage line with him, kind of similar to what we were talking about off camera with you and me and Volkov, in the sense that you can control the match, you can wail on him, but you give Pentagon even a seconds of offense, and BAM! He hits you so hard, he takes control of the match for the rest of the thing.
Yeah. I think he's an excellent in-ring performer, Shae, for what he does. I'm a big fan of Brock Lesnar in the WWE, but seriously, Lucha Underground with Mil Muertes, Matanza, and Pentagon Jr., they're all excellent at what they do. They're not AJ Styles or Kurt Angle, but they're fucking brilliant at the way they're presented and really, really good at reflecting their character in the ring. Referring to Doku there, Shae, just one thing. She went for those. She went for the elbow, and it got a lot of reaction. It was a wonderful elbow off the top rope, and then she went back to the well, and I was glad that it was punished. That might be predictable, but it was. I felt that was her undoing. That she I don't know if it was cockiness or confidence on her part, but she then tried to go for.
I think it's a sign of the kind of fighter she is. Like, listen to the names they had. There was Doku, the Warrior. Who was the next one?
I've got it in my notes here as well. Yurei, and then Hitokiri.
Yeah, you've got Doku the Warrior, Yurei the Ghost, and Hitokiri the Assassin, and that name, Doku the Warrior, kind of gets in mind. She's the more direct of the two, the more fight you one-on-one, the more aggressive one. So she's the kind of person who, if she hits you once, her bloodlust and adrenaline means she wants to hit you again. She's not like, say, Hitokiri, who's more get the job done.
Yeah, yeah.
She'll get lost in the fight a bit more.
So I kind of had mixed feelings during the actual first 4, but in the end I thought it was handled perfectly. And then we led to you, Ray. I'll say this, Shae, you can counter me. Honestly, obviously the girls came in, they did their thing against Pentagon Dark in the Aztec Warfare match. Just me, and I'm not being sexist like certain people might be or could be accused of, I don't know that if I bought her or Doku against Pentagon Dark in one-on-one matches. With numbers, yes. And obviously Pentagon Dark went on to record this as his second victory out of 2. But did you buy the offense of the 2 ladies? We've spoken about Sexy Star and Mariposa. Did these 2 girls look convincing against Pentagon Dark in their respective matches within in the Gauntlet?
Yes, I think they did. Now, they didn't have the defensive stats be able to stand up to him when he started taking control, but offensively they definitely did, and they fought him in different ways. Like, my issue with Sexy Star has been she doesn't have a definable offensive style. Both of these ladies, however, do. With Doku, she's a good striker. She's very precise and very hard-hitting with all of them. She knows how to use her fists, her legs and stuff in a way that does damage without being just flail food.
Yeah.
With Yurei, she's a high flyer. She uses her agility to avoid your attacks, turn your momentum against you, and perfectly uses her own momentum in the same way that a Kalisto, a Rey Mysterio, Phoenix, or most luchadors in Lucha Underground do. Now, while they ultimately went off to stand up to Pentagon Jr., Pentagon Jr. is someone who was able to defeat Matanza. So I can buy them while they weren't able... Well, he didn't technically beat him, but he was able to stand toe-to-toe with Matanza.
Mm-hmm. Shae, I'm going to go into the third...
Even if they have beaten him... Can I just finish here?
Yeah, Kushka.
Even if they wouldn't have beaten him, I could buy them being a legitimate threat to anyone else on the roster. And one thing I really liked was, at the start, the death glare that Doku gave Pentagon. Like, even though she was smaller, it immediately gave me for my mind of, okay, she's definitely got control here. She's someone to watch out for. You don't have that look of, I'm going to end you on your face against a bigger, larger opponent unless you know exactly what you're doing.
Yeah. I've got a question for you here, Shae. It's kind of something we spoke about. I want to get your opinion on this in particular. So the third opponent, Hitokiri, came in from behind. She went up to the top. During the entrances, Pentagon Dark is expecting her to come the traditional route. She doesn't. Now, for my money, he clearly sees her in time, but reacts slowly to the drop kick. I know that he's had 2 opponents before, but that particular spot, for me, I had problems buying it. Like, it was about the timing. I know he was tired, but I felt that the timing was poor. The moonsault after that she performed wasn't, and it was beautiful. But for me, the way she came in was great strategically, but I didn't like the timing of it. I thought it was off. Any opinions from you?
I'm actually going to agree with you on that. The problem is sometimes to make sure they don't injure themselves with such dangerous moves, they basically have to wrestle in slow motion. At least that's the way you have to look at it to really buy it. That, in universe, this is happening like double the speed. We are just seeing it at a very slowed down pace.
Yeah, it's easy to criticize, I know, but for me it kind of looked sloppy. I like the idea in principle, but the execution wasn't great. Having said that, and I'm going to let you take the floor here, Shae, I did think, out of the 3, that they did reserve the best character for last, and here we go. I did buy Hitokiri against Pentagon Dark. Yes, he's had a lot of fatigue going into the fall, but I was definitely the most convinced by her, and I thought she definitely looked great in her appearance against him.
I definitely agree. She was the most dangerous out of all of them, and she seems like basically the Black Lotus's personal hitman, like maybe even stronger than Black Lotus herself, though obviously we don't know. Like she she was the middle ground between the high-flying ghost and the striking warrior. She was the combination of the two, the assassin, and it really definitely came across.
Yeah. I think what was impressive, Shae, was the two of them. Pentagon Dark obviously has been through 2 matches prior to this point, but the two of them looked like they could dish it out and take it in that third and final 4. Pentagon Dark's been through hell already.
Speaking of taking it, going out of universe to talk about the performer herself, Jesus Christ! Her being thrown onto those chairs, it's like, how? How do you walk away from being thrown into a row of chairs without breaking every layer of your spine?
Yeah.
Lady, I know Japanese wrestlers are trained to be a lot tougher than American wrestlers. Sweet fuck, you are badass!
Yeah.
I'm
And Shae,
swearing myself.
what did you think about her going up to Cueto's office? They made a deal of her being the first woman to jump off there and going down on the Pentagon Dark. It looked like she was willing to sacrifice herself, obviously, to get the Pentagon Dark. Do you think it was well executed? Was it a holy shit moment for you?
Well executed, holy shit, and it looked like she hit the mat. Like she bounced off and then landed on the mat. So it was a holy shit moment, and seriously, how the fuck are these people not dead?
Yeah. So, general consensus...
Physics does not work that way, reality.
Yeah. So general consensus, Shae, the third and final 4 was the best match in the gauntlet match. And she was the most convincing.
Yes.
Yeah.
That being said, I still have my problem with the flipping power driver. Like, now...
Oh, I'm glad you brought that up.
Because it's only the second time you use it, I can still buy he tried to back body drop her and she countered, but if they keep going with that reason behind it, that believability is no longer going to fly, because it's like, well, why does everyone keep trying to back body drop her? She needs to start doing it from other angles, like doing it from the top rope or doing it while running and stuff like Pentagon does, so he has, gravity and momentum behind him to make it believable.
Well, you know me, Shae, the first time I had problems with it. This time, I'm not letting it fly at all. I didn't like it one bit. And for all of the reasons that you said. I talked to you before about Owen Hart with the leg feed enziguri. It works once or twice, but why would you ever catch Owen Hart's foot if you know that he's going to kick you with the other one? I know I'm speaking in present tense, but I'm just from that point of view. Or with Rob Van Dam throwing the chair. I have a major problem with that. I know wrestling can be spotty, it's planned, of course, but when it's so planned to that point, you're like, do you not watch anybody else? Are you only invested in your matches? Now, Pentagon Dark, it's only the second time he's been in with her. But really, no, I'm not. I didn't buy it one bit. I do have major issues with the flip pile driver. I can't help it. I do.
I think she uses it a third time without any kind of variation, just a standing flip pile driver. I'm going to have to throw my hat into that ring.
And I think we're going that way. Shae, before we wrap up with our Lucha Underground review, I want to give this part to you. Post-match, Lotus comes in. Obviously, just to give a bit of background before I hand over to Shae here, Pentagon Dark has theoretically broken his first 2 opponents' arms. He loses the third fall. Black Lotus comes into the ring. And then there's another person who joins in. Shae, I'll let you cover that more. Did you like how the show went off the air? Did you like the post-match stuff in general?
Mixed feelings about it, because on the one hand, El Dragon Azteca Jr., a rival of Black Lotus, and another person whose arm Pentagon Jr. broke, comes in, sees the helpless Pentagon, and who's had his arm broken by Black Lotus after Hitokiri won the match for her, sees Pentagon Jr. and decides to break his other arm. Now, on the one hand, I get the story that they're going for, that, El Dragon Azteca Jr. is slowly being corrupted just the way that Black Lotus was. Both of them were students of the original El Dragon Azteca, and Black Lotus turned on and killed him when her desire for revenge basically corrupted her, and we can kind of see El Dragon Azteca Jr. is going down the same road, that he's basically turned to the dark side due to his lust for revenge. On the other hand, I feel that he's supposed to be their main character, and this doesn't so at least one day be their main character, considering he was the first character we ever saw, and this doesn't exactly make him likable, because, you know, even if it's Pentagon Jr., he's still, you know, breaking the arm of a helpless opponent, and Pentagon already had his comeuppance in Black Lotus breaking his arm. Also, considering how Pentagon is so beloved by the crowd, I feel that they missed an opportunity to turn start to turn Pentagon Jr. face and actually have it believable, in the sense that, you know, he's now found himself in that position of helplessness that he's put everyone else in. Here comes another person who has all the reason in the world to break his arm, but instead of doing that, what if El Dragon Azteca actually fended off the Black Lotus tribe and actually showed Pentagon Jr. mercy, actually saved him, which would throw a giant wrench in Pentagon's worldview of, you know, the strong prey on the weak. In order to be respected, you have to hurt other people, and if you don't do it to them, they'll do it to you. It kind of causes a crisis of philosophy in him, and it means it plants the seeds of him slowly becoming a better person. Instead, instead of one person showing the nobility and planting the seeds of nobility in another, we've got another person falling to the dark side, and I'm on mixed minds about that.
Okay. I'm sure we'll come back to that on our next podcast in a fortnight's time. For the final half an hour of the show, we didn't do an editorial in our first opening podcast, so I'm going to introduce this now, and I know Shae is keen to get his teeth into this one, so I'll basically introduce what our topic is today, and we'll both be giving our thoughts to close the show, as I said, for the final half an hour. So the editorial section this week was provoked by a Disco Inferno claim that I saw on a trailer for his Kayfabe Commentaries guest booker shoot. Among all of the wacky and warped angle ideas that Glenn Gilbert is famous for, he professed his belief that wrestling only accounts for 20% on a wrestling show. To close this show, we're going to expand on that statement. So Shae, I want from you, I'm going to give my opinion very quickly, but how much of a wrestling show should be dedicated to the in-ring action in comparison to entertainment? Personally, I think 80% share sounds way too high.
Well, the thing is, I feel that's the wrong way to looking at it. To me, saying, how should you divide up a wrestling show between the in-ring action and the story is like asking, how do you want your leg to be split up? Do you want to have more bone in your leg, or do you want to have more muscle? Without the bone, the leg just collapses in on itself. Without the muscle, you can't move the leg. And I feel wrestling and in-ring action storytelling is a very similar thing. Without the in-ring action, there's no central focus point. Without the focus story of there are these people who ultimately want to beat each other in a fight in order to advance some kind of goal, everything just ends up collapsing in on itself of just random nonsense. See what happened to WCW when Vince Russo decided that wrestling stuff, just throw it away. There was no coherent logic to any of his stories. Meanwhile, however, the story part is like the muscle of the leg. Having good matches will only carry you so far. Eventually, the audience is going to ask, well, what's next? Where do we go from here? That was a good match, sure, but so was the last one, and the last one. I've seen it. Adding the story adds another layer, allows the matches to have a purpose, and one leads to the next, a progression. It allows things to start... Excuse me.
Are you okay, Shae?
Just sneezing, I'm good.
It's all right.
Yeah. It allows the show to move forward, to progress, and therefore the audience wants to keep watching.
Shae, I've had a request from Ashley. He would like to join us for this part of the show. Have you got any problems with that? Our first caller coming in to discuss this. Okay, Ashley, you're free to join whenever you want to chip in to this. In the meantime, just come in, say hello whenever you're free. Shae, you make an excellent point, of course. I mean, for me, though, it again comes back to, is wrestling formulaic? I mean, to an extent, I think there needs to be elements that work and don't work. But to divide it up just between 80% and 20%, I mean, without sounding cliched, I would want 50-50. But you can't always achieve that perfect balance. So,
well,
for me,
I wouldn't even call it...
Go on.
Sorry?
No, go on.
I wouldn't even call it 50-50 because that mindset is a mindset of dividing the two aspects. That you have the storytelling and then you have the in-ring action. Whereas for me, both of them should meld together.
Yeah.
The in-ring action is as much a part of the story as anything else, and the story leads to the next match. Like even Lucha Underground, the most story-heavy promotion in wrestling, knows that. Like take Mil Muertes versus Phoenix. You know, they had all the other stuff around them about, you know, the symbology of life versus death, the thing with Katrina, all this other stuff. But at the end of the day, the writers knew that the focus was hyping up their confrontations in the ring.
Ash!
That ultimately it had to lead that final battle.
Okay. Ash, I think I can hear you.
Yeah,
How are you doing?
I'm doing good.
Welcome.
I've got to agree with you, Keegan, when you said about 50-50, because for, like, if you're going to watch a match, you need to know the purpose of the match. There's got to be a story between them, because this is one of the big problems I have with the Cruiserweight division in the WWE, where it's just random matches put together. I think with wrestling, I don't think it's 80-20, I think it's 50-50. You've got to have a story, you've got to know about the character to lead to a match.
Do you agree with Shae's assessment that but it's still crossover, they should meld together rather than just being 50-50, they should naturally come together?
Yeah.
But I mean, also, Ash, I want to ask you, because you're on here, I know, and I don't mean this as an insult, you're one of the few people that I know personally who watches TNA, and you've been a big fan of theirs in the past. Disco Inferno was on the TNA booking team. So, like, when you were watching TNA, what would you say the balance used to be? Was it 80-20 as Disco Inferno? I mean, I know he's only one member of the storyline team, but did it feel 50-50 or 80-20 either way? Or
I have to totally disagree with him, because there was a lot more matches. Yes, there were stories behind it, but as a viewer, it was 50-50. You could see it, and it blended. You know.
And that's kind of the weird irony, is that, you know, you have guys like Vince McMahon and Disco Inferno saying, you know, we focus more on the storytelling. We're an entertainment company, not a wrestling company. And yet you've got no coherent stories that anyone, wrestling fans, casual fans, otherwise, can get behind, because it's just nonsensical mess, and the only thing you can focus on is the good wrestling.
Yep.
And then you've got the so-called wrestling shows like Ring of Honor, like New Japan, like NXT, like SmackDown in the current years, and SmackDown back when Paul Heyman was running it, that were the quote-unquote wrestling shows that focus on the in-ring action, and yet they've got far more coherent, plotted together, and well-thought-out narratives than any of the quote-unquote storytelling shows do.
it's a great point.
Well,
I think that might be because they're focused on the wrestling, which, again, it gives them a solid foundation to work around, and then they can make sure that the storytelling builds up to the in-ring action, and the in-ring action is part of the story.
Precisely. It's like sometimes when they make random matches, it's like, okay, so it's just a match with no purpose, so I'm not going to really care who wins or loses on this. You know, when they have a good story to it and there's a purpose to it, you know, you pick a side, you pick who you want to win over that rivalry.
I think that's true of sport in general, Ash. I mean, obviously we're on a wrestling podcast, so we want to keep it that way. But, I mean, boxing, it's amazing how many people who follow boxing can't see certain things.
I don't know if I've got an advantage with being a wrestling fan, and I would call myself a casual boxing fan, even though I watch a lot of fights and follow it. I wouldn't call myself a hardcore boxing fan. But at the same time, it's amazing that there are so brilliantly gifted and talented fighters out there, but they're not well known because they don't have the personality or maybe the promotion. That's key as well. The platform. And that's what the WWE is like. It's you know, it's like the golden boy or the top rank of the professional wrestling world, that they've convinced people that, yeah, you know, we've got the best production, we've got the best boxers. You have some of them, like in the same way WWE does, but you don't have all of them.
No.
And I think that's sometimes the promotion and the platform. But it is amazing with boxing in particular how two brilliant fighters can fight each other on a weekend and nobody gives a shit. Whereas you can have two average fighters in Britain, for example, because that's where you and I are from, and everybody knows about the fight. Because it's the promotion and the promos, if you will, that go into it beforehand.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, speaking of wrestling and real-life fighting sports, just going back to something you were saying earlier, the mindset of, you know, wanting to have more matches, more main event matches that are shorter to be more like real-life fights, I do not agree with this philosophy one bit, because one of the advantages that wrestling has is that it can live up to the build-up. You know, with so many boxing matches, UFC fights, you know, you have these two people that you're really looking forward to seeing fight each other. You've been waiting for it for weeks, for months, for years maybe. It finally happens and it's over in 2 seconds.
Well, let me correct you.
Popcorn, leave the arena, it's done now.
Let me correct you on one thing. I don't mean it being the match to close the show. So it's not that I want it as the main event. But if it's
Well,
part
not
of
necessarily you, but I think from what I've heard in other interviews and reviews and stuff, that's kind of the mindset that WE has. They want to do it that way to try to start being more realistic.
No, I wouldn't say... Yeah. Go on, sorry, Shae. Go on.
Yeah. So I know that might not necessarily be what you're saying, but I do know that that's a mindset that's been going around recently.
Yeah.
And it's a mindset I just simply don't agree with, because you're taking away what makes wrestling special and unique to make it more like something else.
Yeah.
Which, and off air, I've used a lot of Yahtzee Croshaw quotes in regards to wrestling. So here's another one that I feel fits very well. Having wrestling take away what makes it unique in order to be more like real-life sports is like a film consisting only of text scrolls to be more like a book, or a man sticking his head inside a pond to be more like a newt.
And I want to add to your point, Shane, as well, about there was something TNA was doing and changing wrestling, where they had the Impact Championship, and it was, you had 3 bouts that lasted 3 minutes, and it was scored by judges. And I was like, hang on a minute, this is not wrestling. I don't want... What are you doing?
Having said that, Ash, it was European-style wrestling, or British-style wrestling in the past, when it used to be on World of Sport. And even when Ricky Steamboat took on Ric Flair in their final match, where Terry Funk infamously pile-drove him through the table, they had the judges there just in case the match was ruled a draw, like an Iron Man situation. So it can be done, but no, I wouldn't want to see that done every week. It is different to boxing in that respect. It's like there is no going to the judges' scorecards. It's a draw or you continue, especially in the Iron Man situation.
Yeah.
But I know what you mean. I like to see elements of both. I like to see wrestling be a bit more like UFC and boxing in some regards, but obviously not in all. But when I say that
I have some elements, but don't take away what the very things that are going to make wrestling special.
Yeah, I agree. I totally agree.
And I get what you mean about delivering on a main event, because there's no doubt with boxing and UFC, if the fight lasts 13 seconds or 30 seconds or even just 2 or 3 rounds, and you've paid £17 for it. And the big difference, not so much with UFC, but boxing, is you buy it for the main event. So if the main event lasts 3 minutes, you certainly do feel shortchanged. Whereas wrestling, you're gearing up for something that is going to last a while.
It's
but, go on, Ash, go
it's
on.
like the CM Punk match. You know, you blink, you miss it.
Yeah. So if you bought it for that, you can certainly feel shortchanged. I just think they could incorporate that more often, but I wouldn't have it close the show. I wouldn't have, if you told me that Goldberg and Brock Lesnar in the back was going to last 86 seconds or 90 seconds, whatever it lasted, I would have definitely said to whoever was running the show, make sure it doesn't go on last. You wouldn't want to close on that, and I don't think they did, but I certainly think they could incorporate that more to establish monsters on pay-per-view. But Goldberg, when he used to be, even in his streak, those matches were short, but they were on Nitro. They weren't when he actually got to the pay-per-view, because you'd expect him to be tested more. And he wasn't under the lights of a main event. So certainly I wouldn't have it close the show, but I think the odd time, as long as it makes sense, you can have matches just go a few minutes for the unpredictable part, not just for the sake of it.
Oh yeah, but one thing that I was thinking, were they running over time? Did they have to make the match quicker because they were running over time?
I just thought it was because Goldberg was injured, Arch. I mean, there was a rumour going round that, I mean, there's a few people saying that Brock's situation with WWE is unclear. But if Goldberg is injured, because he hurt his shoulder a week out before the show, and he kind of alluded to it, I think, on his Twitter, that he was, when he was in the gym, his body wasn't recovering as rapidly as it used to. So, but I mean, I would have had, I suppose there's no payoff if Lesnar then turns around and does it, but at the same time, and I know Shae will say this, and I'll let him say it here as well, it seems they just shit on the Beast Incarnate angle that they had built ever since he had taken the Undertaker streak, for a guy who's not going to be around long term.
Yeah, but the thing is, though, because they built Brock Lesnar so up, they've made him look unbeatable. So compared to the roster, they've made him look like no one can beat him. So that's why I think the loss was probably the better way to go, to show that he might be a beast, but there is a way to beat him.
We don't have a problem with that, but they chose the wrong guy.
I don't know.
And here's the thing, you can have, I get what you're saying from Keegan, but there are ways to make him beatable while still giving his first loss to a new guy, and that's building up the new guy to look just as strong as Lesnar is, either by repeating encounters with Lesnar where he gets progressively better each time, or building up against other foes, like what they could do with Nakamura or Samoa Joe, where it's like, wow, this guy has basically been kicking everyone's ass. It does the whole, immovable object versus irresistible force thing. But the thing is, when it comes to breaking a streak, and let's be fair here, the Unconquerable Beast was basically a streak, just played on a different way than traditional streak, in the sense that, who can beat this guy? There always has to be a what's next. And this is why I think Brock Lesnar defeating The Undertaker's streak was, while the match itself might not have been great, how it played out afterwards was a good example of this being done well, because we transitioned from The Undertaker's undefeated streak into Brock Lesnar becoming the new unstoppable monster, or going back many years earlier when Hulk Hogan defeated the Andre the Giant and stopped his streak. It was basically the capstone to Hogan becoming the new hero. Conversely, with Goldberg's original streak, when it ended, it just stopped. The streak's no longer a thing now. We're not progressing, we're not making someone the new hero, we're not making someone the new big villain, nor the new monster or the new streak. We've just stopped the story.
We'll get to
and
that
the same
another
thing happened here.
We'll get to that another time.
Sorry, not Beast in the East, sorry. The Beast Incarnate storyline just stopped.
Yeah.
It didn't conclude, it didn't end satisfactorily, it just stopped. And you could say that, Goldberg could become the new unstoppable monster. Considering the injury thing, considering his age, I highly doubt that. He simply does not have the physical acumen in order to believably be a monster in this day and age. That doesn't mean he doesn't have anything to offer, but he should not be in the role of unstoppable force. He just cannot carry that anymore.
That's what I think. Going back to our entertainment and wrestling thing, in terms of starting off a show, obviously you can do it with a promo, you can do it in the match, you can do it a number of ways. But it seemed that in the when Triple H was the main heel, you know, in 2002, 2003 time, that he got a lot of criticism for constantly opening up Raw with a 20-minute promo or 15 minutes, something
And they
like
do
that.
it now with his stable of the Authority too.
Right. What do you think of that in terms of giving that amount of time to the opening segment and how it seems to be, not always, but regularly seems to be a promo rather than going in with a match?
You don't want to do that because most audiences, most newcomers to wrestling are going to be coming to a wrestling show to watch some wrestling. Because if now they hear a guy talking about how great he is, they don't know who this person is. They don't care. It's just seeing someone waffling. Now, even if you're not totally sold on this whole wrestling malarkey, it's still what you expect to see. So you're going to be judging the show based on that, based on am I enjoying this wrestling part. Once you've got the audience hooked on that part, okay, that was actually kind of fun. Well, what else you got for me? Then you start sowing the seeds of, you know, the greater story, ooh, who's this character? Or, ooh, I don't like that guy. I hope to see him beat him. And then you have them going into the mindset of, all right, the wrestling was actually kind of fun, and I'm interested to see what happens next. I'll tune into the next show. If you start with just someone waffling to the casual audience, aka the newcomer who's just decided to sit down, it's just someone waffling. They don't care.
See, Nitro back in the
Not
day...
introducing the character.
Yeah. See, Nitro back in the day, in 98, 97, 98, there was always long in-ring segments with the NWO, but they could start the show with a cruiserweight match or even maybe quite a low-profile opener, which, you know, we've spoken about the importance of starting a show off hot, but they did try to fill 3 hours. It didn't feel... You knew the NWO were going to be in the ring at least twice in the night, and they were going to come out and cut a promo at a certain time period. But I do get annoyed when it's like, it seems to just be like, okay, we're going to block off the opening segment as a 15-20 minute talk show when wrestling is the name on the marquee. I know entertainment is, and this is part of our argument. I mean, WWE likes to call itself an entertainment show, but the middle W is still wrestling and always has
And
been.
besides, as the Lexman once said, wrestling is entertainment.
I can think of a worst example when they built Sting up to be going against the Authority, and then at WrestleMania we saw DX and the NWO for no reason, and yeah.
Yeah, for no reason.
And that's kind of the fun thing. It's like we want to appeal to the old school audience. The old school audience buggered up a long time ago when you started turning it to PG and saying all the old school slash hardcore fans can fuck off. We want to build in a new audience. Well, now you're you're also pissing off the new audience by only having watered down stuff of old things that most people don't even know about. Like W's for kids now. No kid knows most kids don't know who DX and the NWO are. All they're seeing is a bunch of old guys waddling down to the ring.
Which is what the NWO was like in the Attitude Era with certain guys, because it was like, you know, they were looking cool, but they were in their 40s and 50s. A bit of a contradiction maybe there. One thing for you, Ash, you regularly review Raw, SmackDown, pretty much the main TV shows in wrestling today, not Lucha, we cover that for you. But what do you think about Raw being 3 hours? I mean, we're kind of jumping around with this topic, I admit, but because we've got you on, I mean, 3 hours is a lot to fill. Do you think that show would massively benefit if it was cut down to 2 hours, or even an hour and a half?
I don't know. I used to say, yes, brilliant to cut it down, but now they have the cruiserweights, I don't think they should cut it, but I think they need to use the cruiserweights better. There's parts of Raw they could do a lot better. I find myself, at some parts, I'm fast-forwarding Raw, because they seem to be on this thing about repeating stuff. And, you know, SmackDown are doing it as well, where they do the Miz and Dolph Ziggler. That's happening again. It feels like creative are struggling. You know, it feels when I watch Raw, there's just something missing, but I can't put my finger on what's missing. You know, because like with the example with the cruiserweights, the problem with the cruiserweights is they announce a cruiserweight match. There's no reason why these two are fighting. It's just going to be a cruiserweight match. And another thing that brings more disconnect to it is they change the ring purple and make everything purple. I'm like, well, hang on, is this pre-recorded or are we still live with Raw?
And not only that, the other problem, and I was saying this the other day, the other problem with the cruiserweights is that they're not letting the cruiserweights be cruiserweight.
Yeah.
Because the other reason that the wrestling itself is boring is that everyone is wrestling the same match.
Yeah.
It's like wrestling Mad Libs. Just grab the template and fill in the blanks with whatever your signature move is. Collar, elbow, tie up, push into the ropes. They break. Then there's this part, then that part, then they hit the signature move, then there's the distraction, then the pin. Next match, same thing, over again, and the next, and the next. If they let the cruiserweights actually fight like cruiserweights and actually have their own style, have each match be different, you would need the story as it goes on, but the first couple of matches, you could just have random guys, because it would be exciting enough that the audience would at least go, that was fun. I'm at least curious about these guys. Then you can have the story, and they go from, well, you had my curiosity, now you've got my attention.
Totally agree with you. Totally agree with you on that point. And it's like, they made the new show 205 Live, and I did watch that, and again, there was still no stories to the match. It was like they had the Hollywood boys, and all it talked about was their background, and then went straight into a match. There was no reason for that match. It was just like, yeah, we'll pick him, go against him, we'll pick him to go against him. Oh, why are they going against each other? I don't know, but just do it. That's how it feels.
That is the first match. You know, and in most cases, rivalries aren't built on the first match. The first match, the first show doesn't tend to have a rivalry behind it, because these people are usually fighting for the first time.
True, but they're doing it so often that it just seems like whether you've seen the cruiserweights for the first time or not, it's still the same template. One thing I want to say as well here, again to bring the memory part. I always think there's still a misconception about the cruiserweight division back in WCW. Because as far as North American wrestling goes, and I stress North American because obviously the Super Juniors and NJPW are famous and very influential on the cruiserweights in North America. But the guys who were in WCW in 1998, who made the cruiserweight division, let's say, more popular in a North American point of view, Bischoff still didn't have great storylines for them even there. He called them in his book, and I've read it twice, he calls them their car crash TV. He would put them on at the beginning of the second hour, I believe. The turn of the hour, he would put them on. And they had great in-ring matches. And it's to that point that if any of you out there have ever played the EWR simulator, the precursor to TEW by Adam Ryland, there are usually two things which basically leads to your overall match rating on the program. It's the match quality and the match reaction. And his examples are great match reaction, shit work, Hogan versus Rock at WrestleMania, and the opposite with great work but little reaction is the WCW Cruiserweight Division circa 1998. And bear in mind, Adam did write this program in around 2002-2003, not that far removed as we are now. I think it sums up the fact that even though the Cruiserweights was full of great action in WCW in 1998, they weren't backed by a lot of hype and great stories. It was simply Bischoff saying to the performers, go out there and do your thing. Maybe the WWE should do that too, but still taking the storyline element into account as well.
Yeah, but as with the WWE, they've been on autopilot for the last 7 years. You know, it's the same stuff recycled. You know, Taz even pointed this out, that, you know, even though there's new wrestlers in there, it's the same kind of template. They haven't changed or done anything different.
Dare I say longer than 7 years, but I get your point, and that's why I think us reviewing Lucha Underground on here, while I've said to Shae before, Lucha Underground is not totally original in every facet. Obviously, it's different to a lot of wrestling that you're seeing in 2016. It pulls on elements from Lucha Libre, I've seen things in Ring of Honor, but it has got its own elements, you know, certainly the way it's shot, elements of the supernatural. They're doing it better than other shows have, and whether you like it or not, if you subscribe to Jim Cornette's school of thought or you don't, it is a viable alternative to what the mainstream wrestling promotions are putting out in North America these days.
And also, Lucha Underground's got its identity, you know.
Yeah.
That's the thing with Lucha. You know, you look at a company like, well, you know, even Billy Corgan has said this. You know, the WWE is sort of like the golden as the top company because of, I wouldn't say because of the better wrestling, but because of the money and everything. They're the top boys. But, you know, to try and take on the WWE, you can't be like the WWE. You've got to be different. You've got to be the alternative. TNA used to be, and I use the words, used to be an alternative. Now they're just trying to copy the WWE, and, you know, I saw their last figures and I was gobsmacked. But where Lucha Underground is got its identity and it's totally different, which will probably make it be more viable to fans because it is different.
Yeah. Yeah. You know, McDonald's and Burger King are rivals, but if I don't like burgers, I'm not going to go to either of them. And of course, you need somebody who has got elements if you want to take them on. But I said this to Shae once, I know he kind of disagreed to an extent, but it was like, I wouldn't try and outdo the WWE. I'm sure you could write better stories than they do, but in terms of production and their hype videos and everything like that, I feel that you have to go an alternative route and place the emphasis on the wrestling. And of course, coming back full circle with this argument, you need elements of entertainment. You need purposes for matches to take place. You need promotion, but I would present an entirely different product. And it starts with not hiring their cast-offs.
Yeah, but because to me, back in the day, because I've already used the term back in the day with TNA, I actually preferred TNA's roster. I preferred their booking. To me, they were, as a wrestling point of view, they were better. And then Hogan comes in, it all changes, and then TNA just turns into a WWE copy, and it's awful.
And that was 6 years ago.
Yeah.
He came in, didn't he? 2010. Yeah. So, and I mean, they were never making great headway in terms of viewers as well, Ash, but maybe if they continued down that path, they'd be in a better position.
Oh yeah,
they are now.
If Hogan never came in, they would have kept getting the 2.3 million viewers and doing really well because they had like talents like the Young Bucks, Machine Guns, you know. They had a few WWE casts off, but they used them in the right way. They didn't push them to the top all the time. Everything was done the right way. You know, and then you look at them now, they struggle to get, I think the last viewing figures was 100,000.
Yeah. So in closing, boys, we're going to go to our kind of closing thoughts. We kind of went in and we went around and things like that, but wrestling versus entertainment, Shae, you kind of referred earlier, it's crossover. It shouldn't just be divided into percentages. You used your bone and muscle analogy. Any closing thoughts before we go off air to close our second podcast?
Not for today.
Not for today. Ash, anything you want to say before we leave?
No, I think that's about it.
Okay. Gentlemen, thank you very much. I won't say Shae to join me because he's my co-host, so Shae, thanks very much for all of your input. Ash, well done on breaking our virginity as it goes with guests. Thank you very much on taking that and for also helping us out with the podcast.
No problem.
This week and last week.
Can I do a quick little plug?
You can, absolutely. fire away.
On Slamdown.
Speaking of plugs and virginity, I need to take mine out my arse.
Oh God! There's always that one.
It's usually you.
Yeah, I know. That's the point. Don't forget, on Monday 9 PM, it will be the TNA Talk covering everything about the Impact Zone, and also I'll be covering about what Billy Corgan said on the podcast about TNA. And at 10 PM, we'll be covering the TLC, where I will fully review the show and talk about the good points and the bad points and give each match in its star rating. So that's all coming on Monday.
Thanks, Ash. It'll be mostly the bad points. Although TLC does have the potential to be a good pay-per-view.
Oh, yeah, definitely.
I just wish that they would, like Hell in a Cell, I mean, less so, but just use TLC matches every now and again rather than forcing themselves to book them because they've got a TLC pay-per-view on the calendar.
Oh yeah, definitely. I'm gonna have a nap when Dolph Ziggler and the Miz are on, so
Oh well, I don't blame you for that. Anyway, regardless of where you are or when you're listening to this, you can catch us again on YouTube. Go to Lucha, that's Shae's personal YouTube channel. Ashley has Slamdown as well. He obviously, as we said, reviews TNA and Raw and SmackDown every week. He's doing 3 and sometimes 4 podcasts, depending on the pay-per-view is up that week. We've covered Lucha Underground for him as part of the Slamdown umbrella. This has been the Thought and Memory podcast for the 2nd edition. Join us again in two weeks' time, which will be the 16th of December, my mother's birthday, coincidentally. Pleasure talking to you today. Thank you very much for listening, regardless of your thoughts of the last show or this one. We'll be back with more Lucha talk in a fortnight's time. Thank you very much, everybody. Thanks, Ash, for joining us.
You're welcome.
Shae, a.k.a. Lucha, thank you for making me look good and carrying me to a 3-star match at WrestleMania. I very much appreciate it.